Hi, welcome. I'm Neera Berry, the happiness coach, and your host of Happy and Healthy, where we explore and discover all the many ways of keeping you feeling happy and healthy. And remember to watch my Good to Know segment, where I've always got something good to share with you. So today, I want you to welcome my guest. We have a wonderful doctor who's going to give us a lot of insight into aging and longevity and feeling healthy in general. So please welcome my guest, Dr. Misha Kogan. He's the medical director of GW Center for Integrative Medicine and also the founder of AIM Health Institute. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So tell us, first of all, what is integrative medicine and what inspired you to get involved with it?
Let me give you one word, a little bit of a diversion about, I think, why the integrative medicine came to be. I think a little context. Our healthcare system is failing chronic care model. So we don't really have a good model to take care of patients who have chronic medical problems, diabetes, hypertension, and others. So I think integrative medicine is the model that gradually over the last 20 or 30 years, appeared out of this whole arena of the holistic health, which we'll also discuss through the talk today. And it's really the principle is very different from how the medicine practiced. You know, you're trying to understand that the body has an innate capacity to heal itself. Somehow in medicine we forgot that. We think that our diagnosis and the treatment is going to bring the homeostasis back, but we're not really acknowledging that the body does it. And integrative medicine is like the forest is your whole health, your natural capacity to correct whatever the problem is. And then the tools within the context of integrative medicine are evidence-based, but they're not limited to the medical intervention. They could be nutrition or lifestyle. They could be acupuncture. I just went to see my physical therapist, who actually lives 2 blocks from here. And, so I do this not because I'm unhealthy, but because I want to stay healthy. Because the minor occasional shifts in my posture I would like to address. So this is when we honor that innate capacity for us to feel better. We put the tools that not necessarily purely medical, then we can address a lot of chronic care problems. And that's the integrative medicine model.
Yeah, so it's really using preventive methods. And
pretty much, but not just that. It's also critical to understand that in typical medicine, the diagnosis is where we stop. We identify somebody has hypertension, I'll give an example. And then we say, well, this person has hypertension, thus we're going to give them a medication to correct this. You're not really finding the actual root cause. You just found the label, but you don't know why the person is hypertensive. The person may have 20, 30 different reasons to be hypertensive, but we often don't go there. Why? Often we don't have tools. Somebody could have rash, be hypertensive, have a little bit of an anxiety, a little bit of a memory slippage here and there midlife. And then this hypertension starts to build up and you think, oh, I'm going to go to a doctor. Well, you go to a doctor, get a medication. The hypertension subsides, but all other problems are still there. You haven't figured out what's going on. So this could be mercury toxicity or lead toxicity. And unless you actually thought of that and you have tools to try to identify it, you're going to let that go. And so you didn't address the core. When we do address the core problem, when we figure it out, when we allow the body to get around this issue, you often don't need medications after. And I think that's also beginning of realizing we have reached complete capacity with the chronic care model. The new medication is not going to solve any issues. They're going to keep circling the same drain. They'll be more expensive, they'll manage certain things a little better, but we'll never have an actual curative solutions. We'll come to a certain point, not because we can have better medications, but because we're not addressing what's actually going on. And that's really our lifestyle crisis, our environmental crisis, our social isolation crisis, and all these things that when we'll talk in a few minutes, we'll see that why in societies that live long, those core foundation of health in those societies is usually a lot better, in better shape than ours.
What are some common ailments that you could maybe treat in a holistic way?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned hypertension. If the patient has a mild hypertension, we quite often can manage it with diet changes, adding some minerals, putting person on a much better exercise program, losing a little bit of weight, And quite often you don't really need medications. But that's, hypertension is kind of easy because it's easy to measure, it's easy to follow. A patient often doesn't have a lot of symptoms, but you can start taking a lot more serious conditions, even things like ulcerative colitis, where the medications are quite often have quite a substantial limitation. So you can look at the gamut of different chronic illnesses and realize that many of them we over-medicalizing their approach. We think that if you give someone a specific treatment, that somehow it's going to fix everything, and unfortunately, it often doesn't. Well, why don't you ask me a specific question?
Well, yeah. Like for instance, you were saying about like stomach issues.
Yeah.
I know a lot of times people are giving protonics for that.
Exactly.
So, I heard you mention that that's not something that's long term.
Yeah,
because I know many people that are on that medication specifically, as well as a few others that are on it long term.
Yeah, that's one pill that I think for all my elderly patients, I often very aggressive of trying to get them off of it. In the short run, it's a great medication, can correct the acid reflux, can make you feel better. Unfortunately, we don't stop it.
So how long is a short run?
I would say 2-3 weeks.
Oh,
if you're on that pill for much longer than that, then something is off. And if you're on it for years, that's when problems occur. You can lose bone, you can have falls and fractures, you can have infection in your stomach, in your lungs. Now there's this fear that you can have a kidney failure, maybe even there's some chance of having Alzheimer's from those pills. So those are the small risks, but you take the pill for a prolonged period of time. You don't know what your actual chances are getting this, and often they're not actually fixing the problem. As I said, they're kind of covering it, like a Band-Aid, right? You have a wound, you put the Band-Aid and you wait for it to heal. Well, it will heal if everything is okay, but if the problem is much deeper than just a superficial cut, then you probably need a different solution, not the Band-Aid.
So what are some holistic ways of dealing with that, for instance?
Yeah, well, you always start with lifestyle. I think there's always capacity to look at someone and say, well, why am I having this acid reflux? Is this because I always eat on a run and I don't chew my food well? Or is it because I actually always eat stressed? I'm having lunch while I'm thinking of some project and boss is yelling over there and like I have deadlines sitting over here and, and here I'm trying to eat while eating is a very relaxing process, right? It's parasympathetic, so it's a cooling of our system rather than, when you're in all the stressors, you're in sympathetic overflow. It's hard to digest food, so guess what? That's what's going to start happening. So those are the easy things, right? But often we fix them and there's still a problem. So then you start digging deeper. Well, could this be that there is some weakening in the muscle in the chest? Could this be that there's some nutrient that's lacking and you need to provide that back in a high dose for a couple of months? So, the issues start from the foundational level where you talk mostly about lifestyle, but then you start narrowing them further and further to try to tease out. And sometimes we can't, and then we just try to manage it, and that's when the pills come very handy, because if you don't know what to do and this is the medication that works, well, there's nothing wrong with that.
So it sounds like you really look at the person's whole life.
Yeah.
Like not look at the
You
whole
have to.
person, not just like they're coming in for X, Y, and Z, and I really believe that, and I feel that that there's so much that many doctors are missing if they just have like 5 minutes of their time. How can they possibly know what is affecting you?
Yeah, well, I think the model is not there. We're trying to figure out what to do with the model, but I'm actually seeing things are getting worse, not better, because the appointments getting shorter, insurance cover things worse. If we really want healthcare system, we need to cover health. We should stop covering the illness. Because we covered, you have a disease, you have diabetes, and you have end-stage renal disease, we pay for your nutrition consult. But if you have hypertension, we will not. How does this make any sense? We have a lot of this kind of issues, and we really need to have up there in policy people to look and to say, do we want a healthy nation or we not? Right now, it doesn't seem to be the case.
Well, hopefully the thinking is going to change a little bit. And it seems like a lot of doctors are more open to that.
Absolutely.
I would hope. So let me just ask you, very often you hear that if there's like a miracle pill that you can take, and just now from what you've explained, it's not just one thing, but people always think that there's a miracle pill. So what do you say about that?
people also ask me, is there like a miracle pill for live forever, for the longevity?
Isn't there?
I don't know. I think it must be an American thing or something.
Or maybe it's just
I
a
don't
fountain
know.
or something.
Well, no, I think we always look for tools out there, right, to add to the complex armamentarium of things we can do. But the idea that somehow there's a pill that's going to cure something, there are very few conditions where we can do that. There may be some occasional cures, like we just had the hepatitis C cured with medications. There's definitely room for that, and we should strive to try to go there. But the reality is, we don't know which things are going to pan out to be the right ones.
Yeah.
And the lifestyle is here. And all the wisdom from elder cultures, from the native cultures that figured out over thousands of years how to do it, is here. We should be using it.
Yeah. It sounds like that. So as far as longevity and what are some things that people should look at for that?
So, well, maybe we should transition to blue zones, because I feel like that's going to be so much easier to explain it in that context.
Okay.
So blue zones are the areas in the world, there are probably about half a dozen of them, maybe a little more, where people have an exceptional longevity. So a lot more people there make it to over 100 and they're still healthy. So they're still working, they're still moving, they still have their cognitive capacity together.
And how many are there?
Right. So, well, the first blue zones that have been described by Dan Buettner and his team, there was 5. So there's a zone in Japan, in what's called Okinawa Island. There's one in America, Loma Linda in California. So Seventh-day Adventists, they're one of the original blue zones. Then we have Sardinia. There's in Costa Rica, there's a small part of Costa Rica in the mountains where there's a blue zone, and Icaria. It's a little island off the Greece where, for kind of probably not really clear why, but there's an also exceptional area which I recently visited, so I can give you a very personal experience of it. And so in this area,
like beautiful places.
Oh, it's gorgeous! Oh my God, it's hard to leave. So in those places, the lifestyle somehow evolved over thousands of years to lead to this exceptional longevity. And so we know the answers. The Dan's team look at sort of what happens when you analyze all these areas. What are the commonalities and what are the differences? And it turns out that there are a lot of commonalities, and some of them are unique.
Wow.
And some of them are very different than you would expect.
Yeah, so let's hold that right there, because we're just going to take a break, and I can't wait to hear about what they are. That's wonderful. Sure. So we're going to just take a short break coming up, and then you're going to tell us more about all the commonalities and all the unique aspects of those wonderful blue zones. So I'm Nira Berry, your host of Happy and Healthy, and we're going to take a short break, so stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm Nira Berry. Welcome back to Happy and Healthy. I'm your host. And we're speaking with Misha Kogan, and he's been telling us about the blue zones and what we can learn from them. And so I'm really curious to hear what you have to say.
You want to live long, you got to know about blue zones.
Okay.
So let me tell you about Icaria, because it's such close to my heart right now, since I just returned from there a couple of weeks ago.
And that's an island off of Greece.
It's an island off the Greece. It's actually, for Greek people, it used to be the place like, why would you go there kind of place, because it used to be a place where they would exile people politically.
Oh, interesting.
Back in the day. But somehow the culture there, the living environment, the food they eat, led to the fact that they're probably one of the longest living people on Earth. And the factors are multitude, so I think we should talk to them about the factors in a stepwise fashion. And that'll also give our listeners a good idea of sort of what can we do in our life to try to mimic some of their lifestyle.
Yeah.
So you start with nutrition. All of their food come right out of their backyard, so to speak. Maybe not in their backyard, but in somebody else's. It's very fresh. And all the foods are cooked from scratch. There's no such thing as the sort of high processed foods the way we buy them in our supermarkets here. They eat quite infrequent. They don't eat three meals a day. They eat 1 or 2 meals a day. They fast all the time, almost every day. Now,
What do you mean they fast every day? Like,
they don't need three meals, so it's very typical for them to have one late meal maybe at 9 or 10 p.m. and then not eat for the 24 hours until the next day.
oh, till 9, 10 p.m. the next day.
And sometimes they would have a small meal in the morning and sometimes they would not. There's this whole idea that somehow 3 meals a day is the way to eat. Turns out you look at all the blue zones and nobody eats like that.
That's like the exact opposite of what I've been told my
It's
whole life.
exactly
That you
that.
have to
Exactly
eat
right.
breakfast no matter what. That breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
So
I
it
mean,
turns out that a lot of this kind of myths, I would call them, are really not based on anything rather than certain guidelines and recommendations that many of them have some important points. But you start looking at what actually gives you the health and longevity, and it's not necessarily vegetarian diets. Koreans eat good amount of animal protein. You know, it's not necessarily frequent meals a day. They eat only once or twice. But all of their food is pretty much organic. The island is completely unpolluted, so whatever they grow is very pristine and clean.
no pesticides.
No pest. Well, they didn't have them.
Right.
They didn't have electricity until 70s, so they wouldn't import things that would cost exuberant amount of money, and they can't produce on the island. So that's the diet. They move, and they move so much that you'd be shocked. It's not unusual for them to walk marathon a day every day.
Oh, that's a
Well,
lot.
there was no roads until recently,
Yeah.
so if they want to go from one village to another, now, mind you, this is not like flat Maryland, okay?
Yeah.
This is mountains, and 10 miles to walk in the mountain terrain, it's a marathon, you
And
know.
do they run, or is it just
No, I mean, I don't
walking?
think they do. They just walk. I mean, they basically, their life around growing the food, surviving, evolved in the way that they have to move nonstop
Right.
from the moment they wake up till the evening.
So it's fulfilling basic needs.
Exactly. It's the natural movement on the natural terrain. You know, you do a lot of squatting, you do a lot of pulling yourself up when you have to, like, you reach the rock and you have to get over, you have to pull yourself up. You know, so there's a lot of natural movements that, gym, what gym?
Yeah.
Exercise, what exercise? I think their recent edition, it's Greece, right? So it's soccer everywhere. So they're trying to level some field to play soccer. So they're moving a lot. There's a very tight social bonds. They live in villages. Everybody knows each other. If you really think about this, they live as a community. They don't live as a single person, because one person could be, a plumber, and another person a shepherd. And so they constantly barter the services. They know each other's strengths and weaknesses. They support each other when there's a need. And they have this amazing festivals, like where they would dance and eat all day and all night.
Oh.
And it can go till the morning. And so they would have to walk from one village to another. So they would walk really far, and then the villages combine, and then they'll do this celebration. So it's a very kind of festive time for them, but they do it all together. So that kind of, and then you become a really important part of that little village, because they rely on your skill. So that kind of, and even when you get older, then they rely on your wisdom to learn. So we visited 85-year-old beekeeper who was still beekeeping and teaching everybody how to do it. So, he's getting older, he looks amazing, and it's essential. So he's not going to nursing home.
Yeah.
He's still contributing tremendous amount to what he does. And so I think that's also really important, that we maintain this meaning. Meaning doesn't necessarily mean it's some kind of a spiritual or religious connotation. It definitely could be. But it could simply be that you are contributing to your immediate family or your culture. And then food as medicine, right? So we talked about sort of a little bit of different aspects. So food as medicine is a critical concept, because what do we do when we get a little sick? Well, what do you do? Like, if you get cold, what would you do?
Well, I know I take like some supplements.
Okay,
yeah.
all right, okay, all right.
Like I try to, there's the oregano oil.
Okay.
I try a little bit of that. I try to up my zinc intake.
Okay.
I don't know, like, if I'm doing this for nothing, or from what I've read,
Well,
it's supposed to help. Vitamin D.
Well, those are the things that I think Icarians do a lot too. They have herbs growing everywhere. So they would literally, they have a little cold, they know exactly which herb to go get. And actually, it is often oregano, and it could be a thyme, and it could be some other things. And
Oh, good. So.
yeah, and the honey. And so, a lot of these conditions, think about this, a lot of these conditions are self-resolving. They don't need a lot of care. What do we, but that's you, and I'd probably do the same. But most people will not think that way. You know, they'll get fever, they get cold, they go to a doctor, and then there's a chance they're going to get antibiotic.
Right. There's a lot of parents, especially, demand the antibiotics for their children.
And the reality is that's how the sort of crash of the health begins, because one round of antibiotics and your gut flora changes a little, and then the second, and
I heard that affects your gut flora for like an extended period of time. Like
30% of people from one course of antibiotic will never recover in the rest of their life.
Wow.
And we don't currently have tools to fix this. Taking probiotics doesn't help. It somewhat helps, but it doesn't cure this issue. So, you know, part of the problem is we don't think that there are other ways to mitigate very simple conditions. Even when conditions are chronic, like acid reflux, instead of taking a pill, there are lots of other things you can do. Some of them are herbals. This is what often Koreans would do. I mean, they will take licorice, they'll grow okra, and they'll eat that, or whatever it is. And instead of taking a pill, right? And a lot of this is you don't even need to take pill or herb. You can wait and it goes away. So the food as medicine is...
Because we live in a very immediate society, you know, where everything has to be very, very fast, you know, quick, you know.
Brings me to the sort of maybe the most important part where I think actually the Koreans are really out there in life longevity. They have this statement that they don't have three things on the island. They don't have work, which is unfortunately true. I mean,
they don't have work?
Yeah, well, they have to. They basically, each person does like 4 or 5 things just to make it ends meet, because there's no like industry. So for them to make money, they don't really. So then they don't have time. They don't have clocks. You know, you schedule the meeting, you just show up whenever, and they don't have stress because they don't have time.
Yeah.
And so that capacity to never sort of worry and live stress-free life, I think, is one of the biggest differences from our society here. You know, like think about when is the last time you had a full day of not worrying and not having any stress? Very few people would have this capacity, and unfortunately, that part hits the most people who don't have resources to sort of literally buy themselves a stress-free time, and that's where I think, unfortunately, in our society, we have this huge separation of access to healthcare.
From what you're saying is that not actually preventing the stress to begin with is actually the better way to go, and not having the pressure of time and not putting that added stress on ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's one thing. I'm not sure we can get there because just how our life's set up. But at least we can do what you're saying. I think we need to practice methods that building our resiliency to stress, so that when the stressor comes in, you're not as affected by it.
All like what they ate and using food as medicine. So we may not have that opportunity here to do that. Like a lot of people live in the city, they can't grow their own vegetables, and so what do you recommend?
Well, first of all, you'd be surprised what you can do with your little backyard. We have chickens and garden, and I have bees in my own backyard.
Yeah, my friend has chickens in her backyard, but you need a certain amount of space. Not all of us have that.
You need backyard, and you need time and resources, absolutely, So, but we have, thank God, in this country, we have a very robust botanical and supplement industry, and so I think some of those food as medicine things we were mentioning, oregano, thyme, many other herbs that we can actually access as a powders or as a tinctures or in capsules. So if you know how to use them, they could be very effective for lots of things. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to take some supplement all the time, although a lot of people are convinced that that's the case. I'm not so sure that's actually is true. But when you have some issue that you need to address, maybe you're under a lot of stress and you're really trying your best, but you feel run down. So maybe taking some herb like ashwagandha or shizandra would help, or maybe taking additional B vitamin complex would really help your energy so you can cope with the issues better. So there are definitely lots of tools.
Yeah.
It's knowing how to apply them.
What would be a good, what would you say is worthwhile taking, and what would you say is really a waste of money?
Great question. Well, first of all, I think if you're really healthy and you can get it all as a food, that's the way to go. And that's how, the Koreans don't take any supplements. And in fact, I think in all of the blue zones, they don't take any supplements. They just have those supplements, that's food, right in their backyard, and they would grow it on purpose to have it available whenever it's needed.
Yeah.
But so for us, I think the waste of time is the regular multivitamins. Let's start there. So nobody should be taking regular multivitamins. Why? Because they have synthetic nutrients in them. Often those synthetic nutrients, let me give you an example, folic acid. I think nobody should be taking folic acid, even the pregnant women.
Really? That's the one thing they push.
Right. Why? Well, because half of us have mutation and we cannot metabolize folic acid, and folic acid becomes toxic.
Oh.
And there's a data rapidly accumulating data that folic acid can cause cancers and heart disease and all kinds of issues. Now, you need to take active form of folic acid, which is called methylfolate or folinic acid. There are several other names. And that folate comes from food.
Like cantaloupe? Is that one?
No? Typically green leafy vegetables.
Okay.
So green leafy vegetables will give you a good amount of folate. But let's say you're really, for some reason, it's a winter and you don't have easy access. Well, then you can take a supplement of methylfolate directly.
Okay, well, that's really good to know. I just wanted to mention about your book.
Yeah.
You want to just tell us about that real fast?
Sure. So I've, less than a year ago, I've published a book that's called Integrative Geriatric Medicine. Well, I didn't publish it. I was a chief editor for the book. There's over 30 chapters. It's published by Oxford University Press. And the book summarizes what we talked about. Sort of how do you approach the health of a patient who's getting older without this never-ending slew of medications and procedures.
No, that sounds really great. And we're all getting older, even from like the second we're born, we're getting older, so we all need this wonderful information. So if somebody wanted to reach you, what would be the best way of contacting you or finding out about you?
Yeah, so you can look up our website at GW Center for Integrative Medicine. It's www.gwcim.com. That would be a good way. Or you can look me up at George Washington University. It's www.gwdocs.com.
Okay, great. So, Misha, if you would, every single day of your life, is there like one thing that you wouldn't do without, or as far as promoting your health in some way?
Yeah. So I think sleep.
Oh, okay.
I think I always strive to have a very good amount of sleep and rest, even when I'm under a lot of stress. And sometimes, you have to cut your sleep short for it. Then I would catch up. So I think having the regularity of rest and repose is, for me, always been a forefront. 7
hours?
At least, sometimes 9 and sometimes 6. And so I tend to try to sleep according to what my body really needs. And, I'm lucky that I sleep well. I don't have any problems with sleep. But I think that's one issue that, for me, if I don't do it regularly, then I feel a very quick shift.
So the lesson is really to listen to our bodies.
Listen to
and then
body.
go to, specialists that will listen to us as well.
Listen, and also will know how to help your body to get in a better alignment and better balance, not necessarily address the immediate symptom that's there, but to really help your whole foundation of health to be better.
Well, thank you so much for all this wonderful information.
Thank you.
You've been a pleasure to have on, Misha. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Nira.
And I look forward to hearing more in the future. So I'm Nira Berry. You've been watching Happy and Healthy. I'm your host, and stay tuned for our next segment of What's Good to Know. Hi, I'm Nira Berry, the happiness coach, and I'm the host of Happy and Healthy. And now it's time for What's Good to Know. And today, as part of my series on success at life and at work, I want to talk to you about challenging yourself. And really, challenging yourself and having novelty in your life every day are really one of the key elements of happiness. And as you know, we're all aging. Even from the second that you're born, we're aging. And as we're aging, we want to have a good life. Like, don't you want to live your best life? So what makes you to have a great life, a wonderful life? And that's really challenging yourself, trying new things, and really stimulating yourself. And very often people say, oh, I'm just really happy, I'll just stick to my comfort zone. But as we stick to our comfort zones, we don't really change in any way. We don't have any growth. And there's a saying that if you're not challenging yourself, you're not really allowing yourself to grow or to change. So really add that. And when you're talking to, giving yourself that little pep talk in the morning, say to yourself that even if you're trying something new and you fail at it and you do it badly, that's okay because it's new and all things new start out like that. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I'm Nira Berry, the Happiness Coach, and you can reach me at happyandhealthy@mmctv.org. And thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day. Have a happy day.